Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the week two reaction show here on the Because We Win Bet Rivers Network. I'm Steve Wyss, and I'm joined by Daniel Fisichella. How are you doing today, mate?
Ciao, Steve. I'm all good. Thank you. Hope you're good as well.
Oops, I nearly muted myself there. I'm pretty good. I heard you've been at a bit of watching a bit of football today yourself in live, a bit of English Championship action, Norwich City.
Yeah, it was a
Take
Carroll
us through that
Road.
game.
Yeah, it was a Carroll Road. The Norwich City beat Millwall 3-1. It was a very, very good game from Norwich City. First goal in the first half after 50 minutes with Jonathan Rowe, who looks a great, great player, 21 years old. Scored 4 in the last 4 games for Norwich, this Norwich City Academy product. Then in the second half, early second half, a goal from Sargent from a corner, third goal from Ashley Barnes, and Norwich looked very good, solid, composed, had a lot of chances, could have scored maybe a couple more. In the end, they conceded a sloppy goal to Millwall, who didn't look great, really didn't threaten Angus Gunn today. And yes, Norwich is off to a very, very good start in the Championship. 2 wins at home and a draw last week at Southampton. That puts them 2 points behind the leaders, Ipswich and Leicester, in the Championship. 9 goals scored for Norwich, best attack of the Championship. And the next 3 games could be really interesting. We'll tell you what more things about this team from David Wagner. They play 3 away games. They go to Huddersfield next weekend, and then they got a game midweek in Bristol City in the Carabao Cup, and then Rotherham away. So, in a week time or so, we'll know more about this Norwich City. But yeah, definitely reasons for optimism compared to last season for sure.
It sounds like an interesting game. I've just come from a cricket match. That's why I'm dressed in white. You wouldn't normally see me dressed in anything other but blue on these shows. But yeah, I've come from the middle of a cricket match. I'm actually going to head down there afterwards after we've done this show. So I've been out in the open air, a bit of exercise today. And I tell you what, Daniele, we've got obviously you on the show here this week, Italian handicapper, Italian expert, and I'm sure you were very excited to see Serie A back in action. We've only actually had 4 completed games of the round so far. Napoli and Inter have both won. You had a great pick on the show this week. Napoli win and Osimhen to score. He bagged a couple of goals. Easy, even money winner for you. I mean, based on already, I've heard people on Twitter saying Napoli look really good. They're going to be, they're the real deal this season for the title again. Is that already a bit of an overreaction, do you think, or were you really impressed with them?
They picked up from where they left, I would say, last season. And, last season they had such a very, very strong start of the season. They won, of the first 15, they won 13 games in Serie A, if I'm not wrong. And I had no doubt about they were going to dispatch Frosinone in the end. But they had a bit of a shaky start, if I'm honest, because they went behind. The first goal was scored by Frosinone by a penalty by Harui. And for 15 minutes, it looked like Napoli were a little bit labored, were a little bit slow. But I think that's understandable. It's still very, very early in the season. It was still in August. They were missing Zamboanguissa from the beginning. And they had a bit of a slow start, and Frosinone took advantage of that. They look brave, courageous, but then obviously the quality of Napoli, who by the way yesterday were missing Kvaratskhelia, and you could tell they were missing the Georgian in the first 25 minutes. Everything went through the right, but then it was from the right hand side with Di Lorenzo and Politano that they manufactured the equalizer. Then Osimhen scored a great goal with a thunderbolt of a strike to make it 2-1 before the break. And from then on, Frosinone had another chance. They hit the post from a free kick, but you could tell the better experience of Napoli had the best. Frosinone, they're very young. They're a bit inexperienced. And I think tactically, as sometimes they got it wrong, they got themselves too exposed. And then in the second half, Osimhen finished the game off. Also, Napoli had a goal disallowed in the first half because of marginal offside. So all in all, yes, a convincing start from Napoli, but you wouldn't expect anything less from them, considering how strong is the starting 11. Of course, we know they are not the favorite at the moment for the bookies to win the title in Italy. But if you look at their starting 11, there is no reason to believe they wouldn't be competitive until the end. Of course, first 3 weeks of the championship, of of Italian Serie A. There are no international cups. So, you have to take these results with a pinch of salt. When Champions League starts, I think it's going to be different. And I think Napoli will still need to add 1 or 2 players, especially in midfield, to provide that depth. But so far, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And welcome anyone who's watching live. Kirk, appreciate your kind thoughts. And also Nico Leo there. Appreciate your very kind words. Ask us anything you want. We've got Daniele here. Grind him down and ask him something which might make him squirm, even put the pressure on the lad. But yeah, it was already, I've just noticed with the betting lines for next week, if you're looking at Napoli against Salernitana, I think they're playing. Sassuolo next week, sorry. Yep. Yeah, already the Asian handicap, the lines moved from -1.5 to -1.75 because of that performance last night. So sometimes with betting, you snooze, you lose. So if you do like Napoli next week, get on early. That's why, just from sheer, the betting angle there, but overreactions can also happen. Inter off to a winning start as well, Daniele.
Yes, Inter, same old from Inter. Pretty much what they did all last season towards the end and what they used to do at home. Strong start. They scored after 7 minutes with Lautaro Martinez. By the way, Osimhen scored 2, Lautaro Martinez scored 2. So obviously the race for top goal scorer is already on. Then Inter took the foot off the gas a little bit, but he never risked it too much. The new goalkeeper, Sommer, didn't have a save to make in the second half. Monza, who, by the way, for me at the moment looks a bit weaker from the side that finished 10th last season and were newly promoted because they lost a few key players. One of them is Carlos Augusto, who joined Inter. In the second half, Monza had a few half chances, but then Simone Inzaghi made the changes, introduced the new signings, Quadrado, Carlos Augusto, Arnautovic, and it was Arnautovic who assisted Lautaro Martinez for his second goal, which killed the game off completely. So again, from Inter, a good start to the season. Inter have won the first game of the season for the last 5 consecutive seasons. Last year, they won it in the very last minute at Lecce, thanks to a header from Denzel Dumfries. This year was much more comfortable. I mean, I don't think you can read too much into it, apart from knowing that Inter normally at home are really, really strong. But yeah, let's see what happens next week when they travel to Cagliari. I think they will find a sturdier resistance in that case against the Ranieri side. I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult to break from midfield. 26 shots yesterday for Inter on target, by the way, if you like the stats. 26 shots, only 3 on target. So, if you're looking for a stat bet, so if you're looking on an angle on that, of course. And I counted at least 4 shots from Federico Di Marco, who's the left back, and I think that's going to be an interesting price for you. We know Inter likes to attack a lot with the wing backs, but yeah, midfield look good. Çalhanoğlu look good. Dumfries gave an assist. Thuram was had a decent game, but yeah, of course, Lautaro was the main man.
There are, of course, some live games on right now. West Ham against Chelsea in the Premier League, currently 1-1. In running goal line there is 3.75. There's some other matches going around Europe as well. I know some of you viewing in will want a couple of live suggestions from me. I'll be looking at Norway. Go to the Elite Serie in Tromsø against Sandefjord and Viking at Stabæk. Over 1.25 goals in running. Both matches are currently 0-0. There's no way Sandefjord keep a clean sheet. They a shocking defensive team. So if you are looking for something live, suggestion from me, I would head towards Norway there. I was just going to ask you actually about, we've got a question from Sham about, he says, thoughts on the Roma game. Are they worth a punt on the win and the unders? 2 Serie A matches kicking off very soon. Roma Salernitana and Sassuolo Atalanta. If you had a couple of free $10 bets, Daniele, where would your money be on for these 2 games?
Well, I start with Roma. Roma, we know last season they were the masters of the tight margins. They win an awful lot of games 1-0 or 2-0. I think it's around 12 in all competitions. And they had problem creating chances, scoring chances as well, especially when they were without the Argentine Paulo Dybala, who, by the way, is missing tonight. And also, they are without their main striker, Tammy Abraham, who suffered a ligament injury at the end of the last season. So they're going to line up with El Shaarawy and Bellotti. Now, me and Bellotti have one thing in common from last season. We both scored 0 goal in Serie A, but I didn't play. And he did. But I mean, not to take anything away from Belotti, but he had a torrid season in Serie A. So these numbers don't suggest that Roma are gonna be able to create an awful lot of chances. Roma come with a new midfield, with Aouar, who you know very well, of course, playing from Lyon in midfield. There might be space for Renato Sanchez or West coming from the back. But what made Roma strong last season was the defensive solidity. Some people might say, okay, but last season it finished 2-2 between Roma and Salernitana. Okay, but it was at the end of the season. Roma were preparing for the Europa League, and Salernitana had Boulaïdia on the pitch. Tonight, they don't have him because he's still recovering from an injury. So it's space for Botheim, whose numbers are slightly better than the ones than Belotti and mine, of course, in Serie A. And then behind Candreva and Castanos. Yes, Sean, I think if Roma wins, this is an under for me. It could be an under, but I wouldn't snub an Asian handicap +1 for Salernitana, for example. I think you can get a decent return to back the visitor. And quickly, Sassuolo-Atalanta, 8 of the last 10 games between Sassuolo-Atalanta have been over 2.5 goals and both to score. Normally, these teams and these managers, Dionisi and Gasperini, they go for it. Normally, they're not dull games. I would say Atalanta slightly favorites, although in midweek they lost because of very bad injuries. The record signing, Bilal Toure from Almeria. How unlucky is that? They sold Højlund to Manchester United, replaced him with a 30 million strikers, and now he's probably out for the season. So it's Lukman up front with Scamacca, who, by the way, comes back to Sassuolo, where he scored 16 goals in 2021-2022. I would say Atalanta favorites, maybe go on the double chance X2. But yeah, I think over 1.5 goals, over 2.5 goals, I think that's a good punt.
Some interesting thoughts there ahead of the kickoffs in Serie in about 15-20 minutes time. This is a reaction show, so we're going to talk a bit about the Premier League yesterday now, and I've got a few thoughts. Manchester United, they're the big talking point. That's who everyone are talking about now after their performance against Spurs last night. Spurs with a 2-0 win. Suddenly Manchester United are terrible, not going to be in the top 4, etc., etc., etc. Probably combined with they weren't particularly impressive against Wolves in the first round either and won. I mean, you may have your own opinions on Man United now, Daniele, but in leagues in general, this happens. Before the weekend, Manchester United were -137 to finish in the top 4. And on the base of that result, they're now +130. So there's been a big reaction. No one seems to like Manchester United. Just looking, the lines haven't changed for next week. They've got Forest at home. And I think everyone will expect them to beat Forest quite comfortably. But in 2 weeks' time, they're against Arsenal away. And already they've drifted from +280 to +360 at the Emirates Stadium. So no one's in love with Manchester United now. How do you personally approach early season in any league where there's a result where everyone sort of gets on the back of a team and they're not happy with them and vice versa? Have you got to find the balanced middle ground? Because sometimes I think you're never quite here, but you're never quite here either.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to consider that the transfer market is still open and Manchester United will be looking to do some business.
That's a very good point.
Between now and the 31st of August, they will be looking to strengthen that defense, considering that Harry Maguire is now 4th choice centre-back. Maybe to add something else in midfield. What worries me about Manchester United is that in the last 2 games against Wolves and Spurs, their midfield got overrun quite a lot. And this is something that against quality team, you're going to pay and you're going to suffer. But on the other side, Manchester United supporters or Manchester United backers should look it on the bright side. They didn't play particularly well in these 2 games. Probably they would have deserved a point from each of the game. And they actually got 3 on the table, which is what counts because they won against Wolves. Last night against Spurs, they had chances, though. Vicario made 3 or 4 very good saves, confirming that he was one of the best goalkeepers in Serie A, and I think he's going to be a very good addition for Spurs. Bruno Fernandes misses a sitter in the first half when the result is still 0-0. Manchester United hits the post in the second half. Yes, of course, Spurs had the chances as well, hit the post twice, but it was a very open game in a way. What disappoints from Manchester United is the inconsistency. They don't seem to have to be able to impose them style and to impose the rhythm in this sort of games. But from here to say that they're not going to finish in the top 4, I think is a little bit of an overreaction. If I'm honest, of course, we have seen other teams perhaps improving and progressing more, the likes of Spurs, Chelsea. Obviously, let's see what they do tonight against West Ham. But I do consider Manchester United still really, really a strong favorite, and we haven't seen Højlund, the new signing. So let's give them time to bed in. And I think they are a serious candidate to finish in the top 4.
Would you back them to finish in the top 4 at plus 130, do you think, or not?
I think it's a very good price. I mean, considering that one spot is guaranteed to Manchester City, between Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Newcastle, but Newcastle, it will be difficult for them to hit the same height as last season. They were very intense. They were very fit last season, but playing in Europe is going to drain their fitness, their physical resources. So, there could be opportunity for another team to jump above them. But yeah, there could be surprise as well. But I think plus 137 plus money for Manchester United. Okay, without forgetting Liverpool, of course, one of the biggest clubs in the world. I think is a very good price.
I think you can't just go from minus 137 to plus 130 in the space of in the second weekend of the season. It is a value price. And remember last year they started terribly as well, really, even worse. So it's really interesting, these reactions that happen. There's also been a slight reaction in the French Ligue title odds. Paris Saint-Germain are winless again. Second week in a row, they only drew away against Toulouse. It was a game of 2 penalties, actually. And even then, the expected goals in the match was really low. PSG only had 3 on target. Even though Mbappe came back and scored from the spot, he didn't quite look his normal self, in my personal opinion. I didn't think that PSG are still not quite in their stride. It's pass, isn't it? As you often get with Luis Enrique's teams. And they have drifted in the Liga outright winner market from minus 375 to minus 275. So, I mean, they're still a very, very heavy favourite. And the problem with France is who can actually capitalise. So it is interesting they haven't actually won a game yet at Daniel PSG. I think there's a lot of people next week are going to be backing them, just saying, well, they're bound to win a game soon. Laura.
Who do they play next week again?
Oh, I actually need to look at the fixture list. I can't actually remember exactly.
Okay, while you look at it, let's.
Lens are home. That's a big game. Lens are actually in the Champions League. Battle of first against second.
But lost a lot of good players as well in the transfer market. So yes, they gave PSG a very good run for the money last season, Lens. But again, similar maybe to Newcastle, similar to Lazio, these teams that they achieved the Champions League qualification, how they gonna react, how they gonna perform now with 2 games per week, sometimes 3 games per week, how much they're gonna be able to rotate, how much they're gonna be able to stay in the title challenge. Look, yesterday PSG looked a little bit labored in the first half. Yes, as you mentioned, a lot of pass. But then in the second half, when they introduced Mbappe and Dembélé, things seemed to click for them. They were a little bit unlucky with the penalty. Okay, it's a penalty. Achraf Hakimi basically takes the boot off of the opponent, and is a penalty. You don't need to go to VAR to see that. But they were a little bit unlucky because he knew nothing about it. PSG have lost a lot of quality in the last transfer. The likes of Messi, of course, the likes of Neymar. These players, as much as you can tell about their demeanor and their behavior on and off the pitch, well, actually, of Messi off the pitch, you can't say anything bad about it, but they often saved PSG in sticky situations. They were able to give the key pass or to score the key goal. And, to replace them in a space of few days is not easy. Just wait for PSG to get Mbappe starting consistently from the first minute, and I think you will see the real value of this team. No doubt about it. I think they'll be winning the league. So I mean, the price minus 275 probably take it now, because next week is gonna go up again. It's gonna be even shorter. So yeah, I mean, just a question of time for me.
Nigel Seeley has asked a question. I presume it is the Nigel Seeley. unless it's
So
someone.
it must be, unless it's someone with the same picture. Hi, Nigel.
Hello, Nigel. Every match in the Premier League cashed the overbookings this weekend. He says Chelsea, West Ham the same. He's wondering, Daniel, are the new referees' instructions the same in Serie A as across? I'm going to be talking about the Bundesliga soon, and I noticed a lot of goals yesterday. Extra time, the amount of time being added on the games. Is that going to be the same thing happening in Serie A as well?
Yeah, they try to be consistent also in Serie A to prepare Serie A teams on when they're going to play the UEFA competition. So yes, we have already seen 5, 6, 7 minutes in the second half as extra time. So yeah, they're gonna be more goals for sure scored in extra time. In terms of bookings, the moment a little bit of a mixed bag. Only 4 games played in Serie A, so there not been too many bookings in the key matches. But yeah, I think that's where football is going. So we're gonna see more extra time. I mean, to mention the game I was this afternoon at Norwich, 3-0. They were winning in extra time, and there were 8 minutes of added time, and there's been hardly any stop. And then Millwall scored in the 92nd minute. So obviously, if you had a plus 3.5, then you'll be happy because they scored that extra goal. But surely it was a game that 2 seasons ago they would have had like 3 minutes of time of extra time maximum. So yeah, I think in Serie A it's going to be the same.
I think it's really something we have to consider now. I was watching some of the Spanish La Liga games, the first 2 rounds, and we're getting extraordinary numbers of minutes added on, especially in the second half of games. I mean, Valencia, Las Palmas on Friday was, I think, plus 11. The Barcelona match last week was 115 minutes long overall. So it depends, though, on the sort of league, because, somewhere like Spain, you can get a lot of time wasting actually happens in extra time as well. And I don't think the refs add that on. But in other leagues where the teams are playing for goals, then you may well get a lot more overs. And I want to just touch on the start of the Bundesliga. They were I noticed there was an awful lot of goals around yesterday. Hell of a lot of goals around. There was a 4-4 draw between Augsburg and Mönchengladbach. Stuttgart battered Bochum, which I was very pleased with. I was very pleased with that one. It was a good pick for me. And I tell you now, get on Bochum to get relegated, guys. Seriously. They've shortened into plus 160 now to go down. They concede goals for fun. But again, another league. I know Germany isn't more known for goals, but it looks like the overs. I think the only tight game was the Dortmund game, surprisingly. But every other match so far has pretty much landed over the mark, really. But
and this afternoon we had an over. Yeah. This afternoon we had another high-scoring game. Union Berlin 4, Mainz 1. Eintracht and Darmstadt are playing at the moment. Eintracht is 1-0 up at the halftime. A great win for Bayern. I mean, who would have had any doubts? 4-0 against Werder Bremen. Harry Kane, of course, scored the first goal. So yeah, if you were betting on the overs, you would have made a few money there. But for me, that game of the weekend was Leverkusen against Leipzig. 3-2 for Leverkusen, 5 different scorers on this one. We know Leverkusen, how good they are going forward. Another goal from Dani Olmo, another goal from Openda. But then Leverkusen hit it 3 times with Frimpong, Tan, and Florian Wirtz, who's, by the way, one of the most interesting, probably the best under 21 player that at the moment there is in Europe. Victor Boniface, who last season I followed at Union Saint-Gilloise, didn't score, but we talked about it in our previous show. I think he is somebody who is going to bag goals. I almost call him a sort of a mini Osimhen. I think I like him the way he plays, very strong physically and quick. So yeah, I think in Bundesliga, many teams are blessed with very good center forwards. I think you're going to see goals.
Yeah, Nigel says there, Women's World Cup, there was 13 minutes added on the second half in the final, and it is him apparently, which is good to hear. DJ Walker asks, if you had one bet today, and your life depends on it, let's say, is a must-win, what would it be? I think I know the answer to this one, Daniele.
But I mean, DJ, if you followed our show about Ligue 1 and Serie A, we both, me and James, have 2 picks each. And my first pick landed. James' pick didn't land. The second one about Reims against Clermont did land. So My second pick was about Lazio to beat Lecce, and I'm going to stick with it. The game is kicking off at 7:45 UK time. I think Lazio, who last season finished second in Serie A and were the surprise package behind Napoli, of course, who won the title, showed great organizations, yet they scored less goals than the previous seasons under Sarri, but they looked very in control of games. And they travel to Lecce, who is a side that to me looks not only they don't have enough goals, but sensibly weaker compared to last season. And Lazio, I think he added a couple of very, very interesting players. They're going to have a few players also on the bench, the likes of Isaksen, Castellanos, maybe to replace Immobile. So I'm going to go for Lazio to win. The odds are very good. It's plus money, plus 130, something like that, unless it's shortened. So that would be my pick.
I think most of my best plays for today are done now. I've got the hot dog in Strasbourg away against Monaco. I quite like them if you want a big price. Later on, I'll be looking at goals in the Lens against Rennes match. I quite like the goals there, maybe over 2.5. Yep. It does have a history of unders, that fixture, though, for whatever reason. I don't know why, although it was 2-1 last year. I quite like an under. It's not often I like an under, Daniele, anywhere, but I do quite like an under in Norway. It's kicking off in about an hour's time, less than that, just 45 minutes time. Strom's Godse against Lillestrøm. Reason being, both sides have sold their top strikers. Akor Adams to Montpellier. He's already scored 3 goals in his first 2. And Jonathan Braut-Bruns has moved to Belgium, the cousin of Erling Braut Haaland. So Strom's Godset, Lillestrøm could be an under 2.5 if you do like an unders. I hate unders. I very rarely get involved in them, but I do actually quite like that one. Nigel asks, will you be hedging your appearance money next week on Lecce? Draw no bet. Oh, that wouldn't. If it was a draw, you'd be losing anyway. So it'd have to be draw double chance, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. If it's a draw, I lose. I mean, I can only do it if it's a draw, no bet for Lazio, maybe. I don't know. No, Nigel, I wouldn't.
No. Hedging is for gardens, right? And that's what Nigel always says.
It's all right. Look, we also have to touch a little bit on La Liga. Tonight, obviously, yesterday, Real Madrid won. 3 goals from Jude Bellingham, who is already, his tally is 4. And before the beginning of the season, I looked on Bet Rivers, and Jude Bellingham to have over 6.5 goals in La Liga was around minus 118.
That was one of Rory's out-season.
There you go.
Might win by the end of August.
It's a great shout. It's a great shout for 2 reasons. Bellingham is a great player. Real Madrid scores a lot of goals. Real Madrid don't have a center forward, so they'll have to spread the goals around. And Bellingham is outperforming any previous statistics. But tonight is Barcelona, who play against Cadiz at home. Now, Barcelona haven't won the last game away, but they won the last 2 games against Cadiz in La Liga without conceding a goal, and Cadiz is winless in the last 5 away games in La Liga. I think it could be one of those safe bets. Maybe go for Barcelona clean sheet, Barcelona to win 2-0. Barcelona is an handicap minus 1.5. Last season, they built the La Liga success on a lot of clean sheets, on the ability of Ter Stegen. So I think it looks like a good bet for me. Also, Barcelona to have a good margin of win or a win 2-0 against Cadiz.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting league to bet in on La Liga. I mean, I won't get involved that often. I think I'll be looking for the right sort of spots. I find some of their matches quite a difficult watch. I mean, I hate the referees just always surrounded. There's time wasting. But at the same time, there's quite a lot of decent skill. Like I say, I watched that Valencia game at the weekend, and Las Palmas have come up, and even promoted sides look really good on the ball in La Liga.
That's the thing. That's the thing. I think technically, some of the best technical players, you'll find them in La Liga, and the way the team's set up, most of them are quite open. On the other hand, you're right. The time wasting, the amount of cards that are given in La Liga perhaps is disproportionate.
It's a tough watch sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it could be.
We'll talk a little bit just before we head off. There are, of course, there's still some matches to be played. I think Monday night in Italy. Am I
yes,
right
there are 2.
Let's just have a quick opinion of those 2 matches that are on Monday night, then, Daniele, and maybe a bit of value.
So the first one, if I'm not wrong, is Torino-Cagliari. Torino against the newly promoted side managed by Claudio Ranieri. Last season, Cagliari got promoted in a dramatic fashion, winning the playoff final at the very last minute against Bari away from home. And Torino, they are in the first season under manager Ivan Juric, and they've strengthened the team a lot. They added Bellanova, Tamezze. They got a very technical midfield with Ilic and Ricci. And last season, everyone thought they're going to suffer because of the lack of a center forward, because Belotti went to Roma. But the Paraguayan Sanabria stepped up, scored 12 goals, and they managed to spread the goal around a lot. Away, they were really good, fourth in the table. At home, so-so. But they could be the surprise package of Serie A. You know, in stranger things have happened. But if you really like a pan on something that goes a plus 20, no, plus 200, no, more than plus 500, 600 or something like that, you could go for Torino to finish in the top 6, for example, because it's a very well-drilled side. On the other hand, Cagliari is going to be solid. It's going to be sturdy, a lot of experience as well. Away, I don't mean they're going to be a pushover. The other game in the night, the game that closes the match day, is Bologna-Milan. Now, Milan is one of the most interesting propositions of Serie A because they've changed completely their midfield and attack with the money they got from the sale of Sandro Tonali to Newcastle. They bought 6 players. So you got Loftus-Cheek, you got Reinders, Pulisic, Chukwueze from Villarreal, Okafor. Now the challenge for the manager Pioli is to put them all together and to make a Milan that is less rigid from the 4-3-3 formation that sometimes we saw too often last season, and have players that can play in more than one position. However, they don't have a goal scorer who could score more than 20 goals a season until now, unless Giroud and Leao reach new heights. Bologna, on the other hand, they haven't changed pretty much anything, but they are, again, a team that plays on the front foot under Thiago Motta. Last season, they took points, Bologna, from all Italy's top teams. They drew with Milan, they beat Inter, drew with Lazio, drew with Juventus. So, you know, especially at home, they could upset a big side like Milan. I feel in this one, Milan, if they want to win, they'll have to score at least 2 goals, so it could be an over 2.25. For Torino-Cagliari, maybe a double chance, or maybe you can go on the Asian handicap +1 for Cagliari, considering Torino last season were good, but never scored too many goals.
What is your team in Italy, Daniele? I know you're from Sicily, so are we looking at the likes of Palermo or someone? Or I know you're a bit of a...
If I say what my team is from now on, people every time they're gonna read it.
Well, you know, let's get it out of you. You know, hang your hat. I know you're a bit of a Norwich City.
My team is Norwich.
Well.
My team in England is Norwich City because I live in Norwich, and my family is from Norfolk, and I like Norwich City, etc. In Italy, I'm from Catania. I'm from the east coast of Sicily, so obviously my team is Catania. But I'm not going to tell you my Italian team just yet. I think you might have to work it out. Some people know it. Some people in the show know it.
I think you have actually said it before. I think I know what
you think. Look, if we do this show long enough, and especially if we do Champions League shows, you probably work it out, because there will be sometimes for me too difficult to hide.
Well, it's not Roma then.
We can go for exclusion. It's not Roma. Maybe we can exclude one every week. Definitely not.
Quick last question before we go. What do you think about Juventus today? They're plus 100.
Yes. On a low scoring game, but yes.
Yeah, and interesting, that AC Milan match tomorrow night, because it's the last sort of game on what you call a betting round. I think there'll be a lot of people just backing AC Milan blind. I think there'll be a lot of people backing Arsenal blind in the Premier League, because it's the last sort of chance before the next weekend of sort of, and that's what happens on Monday night. So, and you can get big public plays on those teams. It can either crash and burn, or the bookmakers are going to be in big trouble. So it'll be interesting to see how those 2 matches go on Monday evening. But it's been great being with you, Daniele, as always. Thanks to anyone who joined live or watching on demand. We'll be back again next Sunday at the same time. I think the handicapper set to join me is going to be Mr. Rory Barlow. So we'll be talking a bit of La Liga in that one. But take care, everyone. Thanks very much, Daniele, and we'll see you next time.